Hi guys, Goose here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the history of Ritchie Blackmore's guitars. Richard Hugh Blackmore was born on the 14th of April 1945. Ritchie was born in Weston-super-Mare, England. In an interview with Sounds magazine in 1979, Ritchie said that he started to play the guitar because he wanted to be like British musician Tommy Steele, who used to just jump around and play. Ritchie loathed the school and hated his teachers. When Ritchie was 11 years old, the family moved to Heston in Middlesex. Ritchie's first guitar was a black Framus acoustic. It cost his parents £5, and it cost Ritchie a year of classical guitar lessons, a condition laid down by his father. He found his own guitar teacher, and using the phone book, he looked up his favourite guitar player, Big Jim Sullivan, and discovered that he was living just nearby. The lessons began almost immediately. Big Jim told Ritchie that any guitarist could parrot the solos that others had recorded, but a great guitarist created his own solos. At the age of 13, Ritchie was playing in a skiffle band, and at 15 he was working at nearby London Airport, learning to service radio transmitters and saving for a real electric guitar. He bought this guitar here, which is a Hofner Club 50. Ritchie says of his first guitar, "When I was 11 years old, I pestered my dad to get me a guitar. I'd been listening to performers like Elvis Presley on the radio, so that would have been Scotty Moore I heard playing guitar. He bought me a Framus acoustic at the local guitar shop. I thought it cost about 7 guineas, which would have been the equivalent of $20, and that was a lot of money in those days. I remember him telling me, if you don't learn how to play this thing, I'm going to put it across your head." When asked what kind of guitar he was playing once he began playing in bands, Ritchie replied, "I got a pickup for my birthday and I wired it up to the Framus along with volume and tone controls. I eventually put a total of 3 pickups on it, and then I got a Hofner Club 50 when I was about 15 or 16, and I also got a Watkins Dominator amplifier. We worked maybe once a week if we were lucky, and the amplifier looked really good. But every time I plugged it in, it would blow up during the first or second number. I'd have to carry on playing through someone else's amplifier." Ritchie says of the Hofner guitar, "I bought a Hofner which was a very thin guitar. It was a great guitar. I wish I could find it today. It didn't have any F-holes. It was a solid body." Ritchie started off playing skiffle music. He says, "We were playing Lonnie Donegan stuff, Rock Island Line, and things like that. But first I started playing off of what you would call a dog box. It's a piece of string attached to a broom handle which goes through a tea chest and gives you certain notes. And any one of those notes will do as long as it goes boom. My first electric was the Hofner Club 50. It was a great guitar. I remember playing my first date with it at Feltham Town Hall. It was much easier than my Framus, which would always break down." Ritchie says, "I used to play in a band and we would go down Chislehurst Caves and listen to trad jazz bands. I always wanted to be a beatnik, or as they called them then, a bohemian. I used to wear tight jeans and a very long pullover, which was shredded, so I looked homeless. I liked the carefree attitude. I started playing in a skiffle group. I started on a washboard and then progressed to a dog box and then to an acoustic guitar when I was 12 or 13. When asked about studying with Big Jim Sullivan, Ritchie replied, "He was teaching me when I was about 12. My brother's girlfriend knew him and he would come over to the house. Of course, after I heard him play, I idolised him. He was teaching me classical, Bach and things like that, and he was teaching me to read better than I was. He said to me once, whatever type of music you're going to play, you must stick to it. Don't be a jack of all trades." In 1961, Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages auditioned 8 guitar players. Amongst them was very young guitar player Ritchie Blackmore, who at only 17 had previously been part of a Chiswick-based skiffle group called the Vampires. Both Ritchie and guitar player Roger Mingay went to the audition for Screaming Lord Sutch. Mingay was deemed the more experienced guitar player and got the job. Instead, Ritchie joined Mike D and the Jaywalkers instead. Mingay left the band over a disagreement with Screaming Lord Sutch about pay. Ritchie joined the band for 7 months. It was a very formative stint according to him. He learned to act like an imbecile. At the time, the Savages were dressed in animal skin on stage, so Blackmore used to hide behind his amps and in the wings. When Ritchie was 15 years old, he went to Jim Marshall's shop in Ealing and told the shop he wanted to buy a Gretsch guitar. Peter Dyke, who was working there at the time, said, "No, you don't want to buy the Gretsch guitar, you want to buy this." He got a Gibson out, but Ritchie said, "No, I really like that Gretsch." And 1 hour later, Ritchie walked out with the Gibson ES-335. Ritchie bought a 1961 Gibson ES-335 semi-hollow body guitar, which was serial number 26547, in 1962. The stock stop tailpiece had already been replaced by a Bixby B5 tremolo. It also had a short pickguard typical of the early 60s dot neck ES-335 guitars. Ritchie would later remove this pickguard as well as the original black metal top control knobs. These were swapped for gold knobs sometime after he stopped playing the guitar. It was a cherry red finish, obviously double cutaway body, mahogany neck, Clouson machine heads, 22 fret bound rosewood fingerboard with dot inlays. Had 2 humbuckers and obviously the 4 controls, selector switch and a 2-pneumatic bridge with a Bixby tremolo tailpiece. Ritchie played this guitar with Deep Purple between 1968 and 1971. There's footage of Ritchie playing this guitar at the Royal Albert Hall with the Real Philharmonic Orchestra on September the 24th, 1969. Ritchie started using this guitar on Screaming Lord Sutch's 1965 cover of Train Kept a Rolling, and ending with Child in Time from Deep Purple's 1970 album In Rock. This guitar's semi-hollow design helped Ritchie create the feedback intro to Deep Purple's first hit, Hush. The feedback wasn't supposed to be there, Ritchie says. I was playing my ES-335 and it just started feeding back. Luckily, the feedback was in tune. It sounds like a foghorn in the background. Midway through the 60s, Richmore modified this guitar with a Bixby vibrato. The 335 was fitted with 2 PAF humbucking pickups. Now apparently Ritchie turned the screws uncommonly high in one of the PAF pickups in order to get a P90-like sound. One of the last sightings of this guitar was on Top of the Pops in December 1971. Ritchie's ex-wife Barbell Hardy sold this guitar at Christie's auction in 2004, where vintage guitar dealer Lawrence Wexer purchased it for $28,000. Its current owner is Connecticut-based resident Ilan Akbil, and he paid substantially more than he bought it from Wexer a few years before previously. Akbil says, "I've been a Blackmore fan since 1972. Although Blackmore had been playing his Gibson ES-335, he had always admired Fender Stratocasters, and many of the players he admired as a kid had used them. However, in the late 50s and early 60s, Fenders were not easy to get hold of in England. Thanks to Hendrix's influence, the attraction with Fender for Blackmore was greater than ever. Ironically, the first Stratocaster he acquired was an Eric Clapton cast-off. Booked to support Cream's Farewell American Tour, the prestigious shows at the Forum were Deep Purple's live debut in the USA. And of course their single Hush had hit the top 5. After the second LA show, Jimi Hendrix came backstage to congratulate the band and tell Eric Clapton that Ritchie had blown him off stage. They would go on to his house for a party. This actually annoyed the Cream camp, and Deep Purple were paid out to leave the tour. And this supposedly is a time when Ritchie obtained Eric Clapton's Stratocaster body and Telecaster neck. Whilst Deep Purple was supporting Cream on a US tour, Ritchie bought his first Fender guitar from Mick Turner, who was Eric Clapton's roadie. Ian Hansford, Deep Purple's technician, declared, "It wasn't very playable. That's why Clapton gave it to Mick. It was a Stratocaster body and a Telecaster neck." And guys, maybe this explains why Eric Clapton was playing a Telecaster body with a Stratocaster neck at the Blind Faith concert at Hyde Park. Ritchie stated when asked when did he switch to a Stratocaster, "Probably around 1971. After playing a Gibson for so long, it took me quite some time to get used to the neck on a Fender. I had a hard time at first, and a Fender sounded very clean. With a Gibson pickup, you got a certain amount of sustain, but a Fender is very right to the point and very unforgiving. It's brilliant if you can get the note right, but if you don't, it will let you know." The first Stratocaster I played had actually been owned by Eric Clapton. He gave it to a friend of mine who was the roadie at the time. That guitar was the one that got me interested in Fenders. I think the first album where I played Fenders was Deep Purple in Rock. The Strat I used belonged to Eric Clapton. I used it and I liked the sound of it. It was very sharp but impossible to play. The neck was so bowed it was really bad. It had a great sound for a wah-wah pedal because it was so sharp, but it was very difficult to play because it was so bowed. I thought it was an interesting guitar at the time, even though all the octaves were out. Ritchie claimed that it took him some time to adjust to the Fender, telling Guitar Player magazine in 1978, "The transition was really hard. I found great difficulty in using it for the first 2 years. With a Gibson you just race up and down. With a Fender you have to make every note count. You have to make the note sing or otherwise it won't work. It's more rewarding because with a Gibson nobody has an identity." In the spring of 1969, Ritchie bought a stock 1968 black maple neck Stratocaster. The 1968 Stratocasters still had the two-piece old tremolo construction and the steel inertia bar and the stamped vintage steel saddles. For his tremolo, Ritchie used a special custom-made 1/4 inch heavy weighted steel arm, and this was so he could attack the tremolo really hard. The value of his tone cap was a stock 0.1 microfarad. With the entrance of new members Ian Gillan and Roger Glover, Deep Purple was now known as Mark II. And for about a year, Ritchie was playing the 335 and the Strat together. At the end of 1970 or early 1971, his worn out frets on his Strat were replaced with Gibson jumbo frets. And as you can see from this photo, the fretboard on this guitar is quite dark, and that would have been because Ritchie would have sanded off that heavy sort of polyurethane lacquer that came on these particular years of Stratocasters. The typical songs that he used the 335 on were tunes such as Child in Time and Ring That Neck. However, midway through 1970, his ES-335 disappeared from the stage. You can hear the 335 in all its glory on the track Child in Time. At the beginning of 1971, a sunburst Strat suddenly appeared, and this sported a 4-bolt maple neck with a skunk stroke down the back. It had a 2-piece steel tremolo, a stock pickups and electrics. And as with his black Strat, the tremolo was also customised to his specifications, and a custom steel tremolo arm was used. The lacquer on the fretboard was peeled off right from the start, and it's quite possible that Ritchie actually first tried his scalloping on this guitar, which would have been very subtle. The Beat Club session, recorded in September 1971, was recorded with this sunburst Strat. This guitar certainly featured a more unique tone than his black Strat, and whilst touring in 1971 he used it in combination with his black Strat. In late 1972 he badly damaged the guitar's headstock. He played this guitar until early 1973 and then he smashed it up. Like his old black Strat, the tremolo was customised with his heavy custom-made tremolo arm. Of course, a bigger hole had to be drilled into the steel block to accommodate this fatter arm. Another interesting point is the lacquer on the fretboard was taken off from the start as well. And it's also quite possible that Ritchie tried a rudimentary type of scalloping on this guitar. You can hear and see the Strat on the Beat Club session from 1971. Some might say that the 1971 Strat had a more airy tone than his previous Stratocaster. And this is something that Ritchie really loved about this guitar. And during 1971 these two guitars were used together. Deep Purple recorded Machine Head in December 1971. And at his disposal, Ritchie had two Stratocasters. The rather new early 1971 Sunburst one-piece maple neck with a skunk stripe, an unlacquered fretboard, and the older black maple neck one as a backup. The 1971 Stratocaster, which we'll call the Machine Head Strat, was fitted with a 4-bolt neck screw, but also with a skunk stripe. The headstock was not fitted with a bullet like a regular 1971 Fender Stratocaster. Above the nut was a walnut spot. Furthermore, only one string tree was installed instead of two. So this guitar was obviously a mix of a 1970s Strat neck with some details of a 1971 Stratocaster neck. Should I say a normal 1971 neck should have a bullet at the headstock and a 3-bolt tilt neck attachment. So this guitar was probably from a transitional time. Ritchie used the Machine Head Strat as his main guitar from 1971 until early 1973. This guitar became damaged on the headstock, and Ritchie played this guitar until early 1973, when the guitar was finally destroyed by Ritchie. In this photo here from the Beat Club in September 71, you can see what looks like a light scalloping on the treble side of the neck, Now, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but this could be the first time that Ritchie experimented with scalloping his guitar necks. In autumn 1972, Ritchie obtained a new 1972 Sunburst Fender Stratocaster, and this was to replace the 1971 Sunburst Strat. Ritchie transferred the modified tremolo from the 1971 smashed up guitar to this new 72 Sunburst. This guitar also featured an explicit scalloped and lacquered fretboard job. Ritchie played this guitar until the end of Deep Purple's Mark II era, and you can see this guitar at the 1973 New York Hofstra University show. Halfway through 1973, this Stratocaster had black knobs like those on a Fender amp or an ES-335. Halfway through 1973, Ritchie replaced the guitar knobs. He used either Fender amp knobs or knobs from a Gibson ES-335. And you can see here the guitar with a bullet truss rod on the headstock. And because this 72 Sunburst model had a lacquered fretboard, you can see that it didn't darken as easy as his previous Stratocasters. Ritchie used the tilt-back feature excessively, while the neck had a beefy neck heel. Because of this, the screws from the saddles for the height adjustment were so short, Ritchie had to use an 1/8 inch thick white plastic strip and put it under the saddles to raise the action. You can see this in the photos here. On his new 72 Strat that he used to replace his machine head Strat, which had got damaged in the summer of 1972, until the Mark II era, this plastic strip extended over the 6 tremolo attachment screws. Midway through 1972, a brand new stock 1972 black maple neck Strat came into operation. At this time, CBS Fender had invented a lot of new features on the Stratocaster model. So the first thing they changed was they went from a 4-bolt neck attachment to a 3-bolt neck attachment, and this also featured a tilt neck feature. This was so that you could touch the angle of the neck. And the reason this feature was installed was due to the fact that some Fender necks needed wood shims in order to line the neck up with the body properly. Fender also changed the value of the tone cap. It was reduced to 0.047 microfarads. The tremolo was a one-piece construction, and even the new rectangular saddles were made out of die cast, and this obviously affected the tone. The number of pickup windings were reduced from 8,000 to 7,600, and this caused a more brilliant tone. Ritchie actually liked this tremolo construction, and all his future Strats were fitted with the 70s tremolo. And furthermore, the 3-bolt neck, bullet truss rod and big CBS headstock are featured on all his guitars nowadays. So one could say that Ritchie's trademark guitar was a 70s era Stratocaster. Compared to the newer 1972, the older 68 Strat had more sustain, a fatter sound and more punch. The new one was a little bit more airier and had a thinner sound. After 1972, in the following months, the 1968 guitar was rarely used, only if Ritchie was in the mood of playing a show with it. Unfortunately, the 1968 model got smashed up and was replaced by the 1972 guitar. And here Ritchie obtained a 1972 natural ash body maple neck Strat, also with a scalloped fretboard, as a backup for his 72 Sunburst. During one of the last Deep Purple Mark II shows, Ritchie destroyed the 1972 Sunburst, and from this day, the natural ash Strat consequently became Ritchie's main guitar for the next 3 years. On his late 72 natural ash body Strat, which he used over the complete Mark III era, as well as the beginnings of the Rainbow period, the plastic strip was noticeably shorter, ending in front of the 6 tremolo attachment screws. On all later Strats, Ritchie preferred a noticeably lower action, especially for his playing with Rainbow. And here we can see Ritchie with the scalloped Stratocaster. It's got a natural finish, a pickguard and a maple fretboard. He started using this instrument in 1973, and this is a guitar that appeared in the legendary Californian Jam in 1974. In this performance, Ritchie was very angry at the ABC TV manager, so he broke the camera, destroyed his guitars and amps, and then ran away with a helicopter. This used stock pickups, however, it's said that Dork Stillwell, his guitar tech, modified the guitar's electronics. Ritchie, Blackmore and Deep Purple went in the studio in November 1973 to record the Burn album. Around this time he was playing his heavy 1972 Fender Natural Ash Body Stratocaster, which featured a scalloped neck, maple neck and original staggered Fender single coil pickups. This guitar had an extra fat U-shaped neck. In 1974, Fender introduced more cost-effective non-staggered flat pole pickups. It's worth noticing that these pickups were of course underwound. For Deep Purple Mark III live concerts, Ritchie used his natural ash body Strat nearly exclusively. His black 1972 model now served as a backup guitar. The ash body now had a lacquered scalloped maple fretboard as well as the occasional metal dome speed knobs like those from a Telecaster. The black Strat from the late Deep Purple Mark II era was destroyed by Ritchie in early 1974 during a very energetic concert. When Rainbow first started, Ritchie was using for a short while the 1972 Natural Ash as his main guitar. He was using this alongside a 1974 Sunburst maple Strat with the scalloped and lacquered maple neck. Except for the scalloping, the 1974 Strat was a stock model with a tremolo, pickups and tuners. Ritchie used this as his main guitar when recording the 1976 album Rising. In early 1976, the 72 Natural Ash Body Strat was slowly replaced by the 1974 Sunburst on stage. A new backup guitar was found in 1975, and this was a 1974 Olympic white Stratocaster with a scalloped rosewood fretboard, first used in March the 30th during the show in Hamburg, Germany. Rainbow were formed in 1975 by Ritchie. They were originally established with Ronnie James Dio's American band Elf, but after their self-titled debut album, Ritchie fired the backing members and continued with Dio. Rainbow recorded 2 more studio albums. Rainbow's early work primarily featured mystical lyrics with a neoclassical metal style. In this photo here from late 1976, we can see Ritchie on stage with Rainbow. He is playing his Olympic white 74 Strat with the original staggered Fender single coil pickups. The 1974 Olympic white Strat has a serial number 578265. This was his first Strat with a scalloped rosewood fretboard. Around this time he actually preferred rosewood for all of his main guitars. A rosewood board tends to be easier to scallop and needs no re-lacquering afterwards. Also for Ritchie, the rosewood sounded warmer and had a fuller mid-range tone. You can see Ritchie first used this guitar in autumn of 1976. The tremolo on this guitar was kept stock. On this guitar he changed the tuners to Shallers, and from now on all of Ritchie's Strats featured Shallers or the later staggered Spursel types. And this was also the last guitar to feature stock Fender pickups. This guitar was used live until the middle of 1977. It disappeared for about 2 years and then it came back with new pickups. Here we can see Ritchie in middle to late 1977, and you can see here a 1974 Sunburst Fender Stratocaster serial number 576183. This had a scalloped rosewood fretboard with an old style staggered single coil pickup in the lead position and a newer flat pole in the neck position. The Fender factory actually switched over in spring 1974 from the traditional staggered magnet pole pieces to the more cost-effective flat pole pieces. Apparently this guitar was one of his favourite guitars and had a really great tone, and this quickly became his main guitar. This also had an extra fat neck profile. You can see him playing this guitar on Rock Palace concert on the 20th of October 1977. This particular guitar is Olympic white with a black pickguard and rosewood fretboard. He used this guitar from 1977 until the Down to Earth era. With this particular guitar, Ritchie started to experiment with different pickups. He used a Diamazio HS2, a Schecter F500 TS, a Velvet Hammer Red Rhodes, an OBL Black Label, and Bill Lawrence pickups. He eventually settled with the Seymour Duncan quarter-pound flat SSL4 pickups. And this is the first of his Strats which actually used a dummy pickup in the middle. Also, this guitar featured a 3-way pickup switch rather than the usual 5-way switch. Olympic white serial number 5778960, designed and built by his tech. Ritchie also wanted a more modern sound, and finally he chose the Velvet Hammer pickups, a high quality, slightly overwound Fender style pickup. In the middle position of the pickguard, Ritchie's tech installed the VHS 2R model, as a dummy coil construction, so together with the bridge or neck pickup, Ritchie received a humbucking effect. The dummy coil was a demagnetized VHS 2R pickup. Furthermore, this axe was probably the first of his guitars to be equipped with his master tone circuit, otherwise known as MTC. This would give Ritchie a bit of a creamier lead guitar sound. All of the subsequent Stratocasters would have the MTC built in. The Stratocaster used a stock black pickguard from 1978, during the last months when Ronnie James Dio was lead singer. Rainbow used a huge rainbow on stage, equipped with more than 4,000 light bulbs, which caused a lot of hum, and the hum interfered with Ritchie's stock single coil pickups. The amount of hum and noise was so annoying that Ritchie had problems to concentrate on his difficult solo parts, and he wanted to get rid of the problem. First of all, Ritchie's tech tried to shield the pickup routings of the Strat with different materials to solve this problem. He then decided to modify the stock Fender staggered single coil pickups by overwinding them. He put an additional 1000 ohms on the Fender staggered lead pickup, a little bit less on the newer Fender flat pole pickup. Finally, the lead pickup had a reading of 6.6k ohms. The only problem with overwound pickups is that a lot of treble gets lost when you roll down the volume pot. So Ritchie's tech installed a treble bleed capacitor onto his guitar. At the same time, the stock 250k volume pot was replaced with a 300k type. The three-way pickup switch was wired as lead, and then lead and neck in the middle position. In the middle position of the pickguard was an empty pickup cover. Ritchie's tech inserted a special tone circuit into this guitar. It was so called the MTC. And here we have an Olympic white Stratocaster with a white pickup and rosewood scalloped fretboard. This is Ritchie's main Strat, and this guitar is actually used by Ritchie now. This particular guitar is still used by Ritchie, and it has become the blueprint for his signature guitar run that was sold by Fender Mexico. And the interesting thing about this guitar is that it had a gradual scalloped rather than a fully scalloped fretboard. He first began playing this guitar in 1980 in his Rainbow days. However, he can be seen using it as well on the Deep Purple reunion gigs. This guitar also features a dummy middle pickup and two Seymour Duncan quarter-pound flat SSL4 pickups and a three-way switch. He installed Schecter F500T pickups. Schecter had very fat quarter-inch cylinder magnets and a tap coil. The coil was wound with AWG44 wire instead of the AWG42 as used by Fender. Because of the fat magnets, the tone gets very meaty with a punchy bass, something Ritchie really liked. Ritchie's tech only connected the inner half of the lead pickup's coil and the outer half of the next pickup's coil to receive additional bass response. He still used the dummy coil in the center position. This Strat was white with a big headstock, a maple neck with a scalloped rosewood fingerboard, and a white pickguard with black pickup covers and also black knobs. The upgraded guitar showed up on stage in late 1979 and was used along with the 1977 black guarded Velvet Hammer Strat in 1980, which became Ritchie's favourite axe. The Velvet Hammer Strat stayed his second main axe for many years. And here is another Stratocaster that Ritchie still owns to this day. It's a vintage white with a white pickguard and a rosewood fretboard. This particular guitar has lace sensor pickups, and he's changed the knobs to white. You can see Ritchie playing this guitar on the 1990s Deep Purple and Rainbow reunion concerts, and it's his current main recording and live electric guitar. This guitar became the blueprint for Fender Japan's Blackmore signature Strat. One thing to note here, guys, is that Ritchie never used the middle pickup. That's why often it was a dummy pickup. He used a three-way switch, but he never used it in the middle, so he was always either using the neck or the bridge pickup individually. And guys, my main Stratocaster that I use, if you watch the channel, you'll see that I only have a neck and a bridge pickup. I'm not sure that removing the middle pickup maybe frees up the strings a little bit, but I much prefer the tone of just the neck and the bridge pickup. I also do tend to use a middle position, although it's a little bit harsher than the softer sort of Strat sounds that you can get, which Mark Knopfler got famous for example. Thanks guys for checking this video out. I've just started to make these videos again. These are going to be coming out weekly, so stay tuned. We've got another video featuring Ritchie's effects pedals, and another one featuring his amplifiers. They're coming out this week, and stay tuned for more videos very, very soon. So take care, guys. God bless. This is the Goose signing out.